Welcome to the 21st Tongues in Trees newsletter and welcome to my garden. So this is our 21st edition. It's the first of our monthly newsletters as opposed to weekly, and I'm hoping it's packed with way more enthusiasm and energy for you to sink your teeth into. So what's happening this month? To start with, I'm changing the title of the good news section. The good news section is now called It Starts with a Trickle, because that's what we're hoping for, right? A trickle of change that turns into a flood. So what's starting with a trickle this week is insect-based pest control. We also have a look into Permaculture Principle 1, observe and interact, and we look at that in terms of invasive plants. Madagascan periwinkles, which are a lovely little flower. We're going to look at the wonder of Australian native pepperberries, and we're going to get stuck into an idea for children in nature as our feature item this month. Don't forget to check the description for time codes. If you don't want to hear me rabbit on about something, just go down there, click on the next section. Don't forget to check the description for more information. There's lots of links down there relating to subject matter from this particular newsletter. You can also find the link to the Substack newsletter if you'd rather read than listen to my voice. Anyway, let's get stuck into it. Pesticides. Love them or hate them, they are mainstays for many agricultural industries. Thankfully, with more and more scientific evidence supporting claims that they are more harmful than beneficial, people are looking for alternative solutions. Harmful effects include damage to the soil biome, unintended negative impacts on insect populations, and possibly poisoning our food. One of the most serious impacts is on bees. Many pesticides appear to have effects that stop bees from foraging and eventually destroy populations. This is dire news for agriculture and for us. Without these important pollinators, many of our food crops won't produce yields that can feed us. Here's the good news. What you're looking at is a green ant nest. These guys have a nasty sting, but they are also voracious predators of their fellow insects and could present an alternative to pesticides. A recent study of more than 26 ants across countries such as the United States, Australia and Brazil has yielded evidence that ants are, in fact, more effective than pesticides for controlling pest insects in crops. This isn't a new idea. Citrus farmers in China have been using ants as pest control for centuries. It's really exciting to see environmentally friendly solutions like this being explored and publicised. After finding the initial article, I did a Google search and found that the story had been picked up by various media organisations. But what about aphids and other honeydew-producing pests? It's a good question. Ants farm them rather than control them. The scientists found that if alternative sources of sugar were supplied, the ants ignored these pests while still attacking other crop-damaging insects. Of course, there's no reason why, in addition to the sugar, farmers couldn't cultivate natural aphid predators like lacewings to improve the efficacy of insect-based pest control. It starts with a trickle, and let's hope that the flood of insect-based pest control leaves theory and becomes practice soon, just like it already is in China. You may have seen my promo earlier this week where I talked about scarlet passionflower and how I'm using the permaculture principle of observe and interact, which is the first principle, to decide whether or not to get rid of invasive plants that are in my patch of remnant rainforest. Now I want to go into that a bit further because I realise I didn't actually explain. So here's what I did to decide whether or not scarlet passionflower deserved a place in my garden. First of all, I did some research, which is part of the observation technique in our modern age where we have access to so much information at our fingertips. And I discovered that it was invasive, it can smother plants, but that it relies on moisture. It really needs a lot of moisture. So I knew that, or rather, I hypothesized that when we got to dry season up here in the tropics, it might struggle. And I'm already seeing evidence of that, as you can see in this photograph I took. We've had a really dry 10 days, and that's really all it takes in this part of the world, because I'm in the wettest town in Australia. Now, that was one thing. I was like, well, the weather's going to help me to control this beast. Now, the other thing is it is all through this gully below me. There's no way I can tackle that without a lot of time and energy, which frankly I don't have. We're all busy, right? We all have lives that we need to fill with things like work in order to make money. So I decided that I was always going to have it around, whether I liked it or not. But how much effort and what priority did it take on the list of things I really needed to eradicate from the environment? Well, I found that it actually fills the place of some other vines which are harder to find. What I'm doing though is I'm planting those vines here in my butterfly room, because a lot of them are hosts for butterflies, so that I can start to fill the environment and replace the scarlet passion flower that I take out with vines that will offer the same ecosystem services but are native to this part of the world. As the weather warmed and the plants started to flower, I noticed that it offered a lot of ecosystem services. I frequently see different sorts of insects on the flowers, but more often I see birds. And every single honey eater in this garden that I've identified, I've seen at some point on the scarlet passion flower. So I know that it's offering important resources to the organisms that I want to cultivate in my garden. Now, the final thing, and there's some of those sunbirds now, the final thing that I really want from a lot of my plants is I want to be able to get food from my garden, and the scarlet passion flower actually develops an edible fruit. Now, it's not as palatable as your standard passion fruits that are being cultivated in order to eat, but it's still food, and I really like the idea of giving foods to my family that grow naturally, grow in my organically managed garden, and that have different flavours. I want my children to develop palates that will accept a variety of flavours. So there's the steps of observation that I went through. I observed all these things about that plant, and then I decided that my interaction with that vine is going to be minimal. I'm only going to remove it when I'm creating new rooms in my garden for specific purposes. And then when I do remove it, I'm going to replace it with native vines. So that's why this area has been cleared of this area has been cleared of scarlet passion flower, but other areas in the garden still have lots of flowers for the birds and for the bees, and also are hopefully developing fruit so that my family and I can enjoy a new taste sensation and the health benefits that come along with freshly harvested produce. Plant profile: Madagascan periwinkle. This plant is a weed in my garden, but in the tradition of the permaculture tip this week, I thought it was worth showcasing. My first instinct was to remove it, but my partner wrinkled his brow and suggested leaving it until we could cover the soil with something else. I'm glad he did. For a few months, it was one of only a few flowers to feed the pollinators, and boy, does it feed the pollinators. I rarely see the periwinkles without a butterfly fluttering past and landing on the colourful blooms. In its native environment, this plant is a perennial, and it can be kept as a perennial in tropical and subtropical zones around the world. Be warned though, it is a prolific self-seeder and can escape cultivation as it has in my garden. Gardeners in more temperate zones need not do without it though, as it can be cultivated in spring and summer as an annual splash of colour supported by rich green foliage. Madagascan periwinkle doesn't like wet feet, so be sure to plant it in well-draining soil. Flowers are more prolific in a poorer soil, so one can reap the benefits of the pretty blooms without fertilising or giving out more fertile plots. Apart from its ecosystem services, Madagascan periwinkle has medicinal properties and has been used to treat various ailments from diabetes to cancer. It should be used with caution, however, as there are concerns about toxicity in the unrefined components of this lovely plant. This week's wonder wasn't in the garden, but the kitchen. I decided to try experimenting with Australia's native pepperberry, and I was thrilled with the results. The flavour is amazing, a true treat for the palate. It's vibrant and alive and changes as you consume it. I simply crushed the dried berries with a mortar and pestle and started using it instead of black pepper. I purchased this jar of dried berries by mail order, as unfortunately this plant won't grow in my climate. At this point, I'd like to assure you that I have no affiliation with the Kakadu Plum Company, and I receive no benefit from using this product in this newsletter. I also receive no benefit from recommending them. I do recommend them. I've been ordering from them for years and I've always been happy with their products and services. They also ship internationally. The flavour is much like a black peppercorn, but with notes of berry and a kick of spicy chilli. It goes beautifully with camembert, fresh tomato and crackers, and is lovely in homemade guacamole. I also tried it as a dry rub on slow roasted lamb. The flavour was too subtle, perhaps because of the long cooking time. Perhaps I wasn't generous enough with the rub. I'll try it on roast beef and let you know. My recommendation, if you like camembert, try it. I'm drooling just thinking about it. This month's feature is children in nature. My children get a lot of exposure to nature and gardening. So as the old saying goes, familiarity breeds contempt. And if I want to get them involved, I'm forced to find new and novel ways to re-energise them and make them enthusiastic again. A few weeks ago I had to fill up these large pots to create a temporary vegetable garden. We're renovating the garden rooms and the area that's going to host all our vegetables isn't ready yet. I didn't have enough soil, but I had lots of plant matter and cardboard moving boxes left over from our recent move. So I decided to fill each of these pots with vines and then cover them with cardboard to stop those vines from regrowing, and basically create compost at the bottom of each of my pots, because I knew I was planting seeds and the seeds would, by the time the seeds got down to that level beneath the soil, though that plant matter would be composted. After I'd filled them up, I realised that they really needed to be compacted or I was going to lose my soil level. It ended up happening anyway, but I didn't lose it as much as I would have. So I thought, how do I compact the material in these pots to speed up decomposition and give room for the soil? I called the children. They had a glorious half an hour and they jumped up and down in these pots on top of the cardboard, squashing all the cut vines that we'd taken out of another section of the garden, and laughing and joking and burning energy. It was not the kind of garden experience that they expected, but one that they thoroughly enjoyed. And it's also a great way to get nutrients and compost into a pot. I didn't have to purchase it, I didn't have to wait for it to decompose, and as you can see, it's already feeding this luscious crop of heirloom tomatoes. Another way to get children connecting with nature is nature journaling. I've nature journaled for years and it's something that I really enjoy sharing with my children. So this week's free read is about my experiences with nature journaling. It's fun, it gets you connected to nature, and it involves the arts. Win, win, win. Thanks so much for joining us this week for the 21st Tongues in Trees newsletter. Don't forget, you can find the print version over on Substack if you'd like to go over any of it, or if you want to send the link to someone who might like to read it. Don't forget to check the description for other links to related stories. And please subscribe, like, And I don't get paid for this YouTube channel at the moment. I am not monetized because I don't have enough subscribers or video watching time, so feel free to get in and look at some of my other videos. Or if you'd like to buy me a coffee to keep me motivated, then my Ko-Fi link is down in the description as well. Thanks so much.